Hi, my name is Lauren Fitzgerald, and today I will be speaking to you about Sarain Fox. So who is Sarain Fox? She is Anishinaabe and is from Batchewana First Nations, a community outside of Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. She is an activist and empowers Indigenous youth to find their voice. She is a dancer, choreographer, television host, producer, and brand ambassador. With all her talents, she uses her voice to advocate for Indigenous representation. This is a quote by her that I really like. So we use whatever tools we can to shift perspectives and reveal truth. I use dance, writing, film, fashion, and public speaking to tell stories. My vision is to raise the voices of Indigenous people and to make people aware of our truths. So this is a video on the importance of using your voice.
When you're an Indigenous person, you often have a lot of reasons why you either silence yourself or you are silenced. I think finding my voice and using my voice is the resistance. When I looked at who I was as an Indigenous woman, I realized that I come from an oral history. My people have been sharing stories of who they are and how to be and act in this world. I'm responsible for upholding and continuing my family's legacy. My mom had to fight to be who she was. To raise kids who were proud of being Indigenous was not something it wasn't a path that was paved for her. So it was this incredible resistance of being raised to talk about who I am and to want to share that with others. My goal is to be the kind of woman that my mom has taught me and shown me to be. She's so good at making you feel like you absolutely belong. One day, maybe my kids won't have to ask so many questions. They won't wonder why they don't exist. They won't look for themselves. And they won't question their identity. Maybe my kids will grow up in a way where they really just exist, you know? Beauty is so personal, but beauty for me is about connection. It's about how you want to connect with people. It's about how you connect with your world and how you say who you are. Bojo, Waban Anango Kwain Disnakas, Wabazation Dodem, Anishinaabe Kwayandao, Batchewana and Donjabani Somadewian. That's my real name. I'm also known as Sarain Fox.
So she has done a lot of activism. So she's an advocate for those who do not have a voice. She centers her advocacy on the bridging of both reconciliation and action. So this is a dynamic relationship between Canada and Indigenous communities, and for a search for truth rather than just the idea of reconciliation. So what is the difference? So systematic issues still plague Indigenous communities. They have limited access to their culture and knowledge, and children are still being apprehended at alarming rates. So we're still in the truth phase. In that phase, active truth seeking and acknowledgement is essential. We need to see some action on dismantling harmful systems based on that truth. We need to see our languages revitalized, our cultures and our children returned to us. So these are some of the different ambassador brands and partners. So she's an ambassador for the Manitoba Mukluk Story Boot School, for Canada Goose, Nike, Harley Davidson, Sephora, the Center for Biodiversity, the Threadright Foundation, which is Sustainable Travel and Cultural Preservation, and Pendleton, Canada. So she uses all these opportunities when working with big brands to highlight her culture in the mainstream. And here is her a clip of her working with Sephora.
When I was growing up, I didn't see Indigenous people anywhere around me. I didn't see Indigenous people on billboards or in TV shows. So it was really hard for me to dream of myself or see myself in this world. When we look around, it's important that we see each other and we see the voices that aren't being heard. So we have meaningful representation and role models, and to uplift those voices who are really sacrificing their time and using their spirit, their energy, their expertise to make sure our communities are well and healing. Suzanne is an advocate, healthcare worker, mother, and leader in the community. She's been working to make sure that Indigenous people have access to adequate testing and resources during the COVID-19 pandemic. She's a really important person to a lot of people, but she's an inspiration to me.
The clinic started as a community partnership for Indigenous people and their families to have access to COVID testing and supports that come along with that testing. So lack of representation in healthcare truly is killing people. Structures of racism, structures of exclusion, structures in which Indigenous people might not feel they can access a family doctor or a specialist that is from their community and understands them.
I think it's really important for Indigenous people and Indigenous communities that we have people like Suzanne. I want her to see herself as worthy of that good work that she gives to everyone else for herself.
The ways that you can provide the best care for the people around you, and it actually does truly start with taking care of yourself.
Each and every one of us has that gift, has that beauty that we give to the world. And I think when we lift each other up, we create space for all of us to shine. When I was growing
So as an artist, she is trained through the Alvin Ailey Bachelor of Fine Arts program in New York City. She spent 2 summers performing for the Ajkin Ballet Theatre Company. She's a member of the Untitled Collective, a New York City-based Australian Aboriginal modern dance collective. She's a member of the Kahawai Dance Theatre. So this is an Ontario-based company that explores the intersection between Indigenous and new performance techniques. In 2011, she was invited by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada to co-create a piece with Zara Choral Theatre, and she hosts the documentary Future History. And the aim of this show is to raise the voices of Indigenous people. So the classroom resource I will share with you today is a documentary called Ainundi on the it's the story of her aunt who survived residential school, and it talks about her story. So some of the key points in the documentary, it states the importance of elders in the Indigenous communities as they are the knowledge keepers. Her aunt worked for the Truth and Reconciliation Committee and helped survivors share their truths. So she attended the residential school in Spanish, Ontario. It also talks about how the story will carry on for generations. It touches on the racism experienced in residential schools. And it also talks about the hardships that she experienced once she was out of the school and how she found her way back to her spirituality through the Indian Friendship Center in Toronto. Other key points, she shares her story of trauma and how they were treated by the nuns. She talks about how the priests would get the young girls pregnant and then they were never seen again. She talked about her guilt, about how she outlived her brothers and sisters. She once had tried to run away, however, was caught in Massey and was returned to the school by police. And her punishment was that she wasn't allowed to eat for a week and she was beat with a strap. They also shaved her head in front of her peers, and her peers were no longer allowed to speak to her for the rest of the term. And towards the end of the documentary, it talks about the importance of forgiveness and how it brings love and peace within yourself, but how that was such a long journey for her. So curriculum integration, I connected it to grade 5. So describe some significant effects of European conflicts on Indigenous peoples and on what would eventually become Canada, as well as explain some of the ways in which interactions among Indigenous peoples, among European explorers and settlers, and between Indigenous and European people in what would eventually become Canada are connected to issues in present day Canada. So throughout the documentary, you can really see the past trauma and then how it has impacted her throughout her life. So pulling from her story, students can begin to understand the impact the Canadian government had on Indigenous people. The documentary is really powerful, and it can be used for many different branches of lessons. So I've also included some additional resources. So the documentary link is there. The Future History homepage, which is the television series that Sarain Fox produces. She's also done some TED Talks and a couple additional YouTube videos with Sarain Fox. And this is just to conclude a video on the importance of standing up for what you believe in.
But it's really simple. I'm going to quote Bobby Jean Three Legs. She says that the very first thing that you do every morning is you get up and you stand up. And that's the same thing that Indigenous people are doing. They are just simply standing up for what's right and standing up for a future, their children's future. And it's not so much about Standing Rock or Oak Flat or Mauna Kea. It really is about making a standing rock in your own home and figuring out what it is that you are willing to fight for and what you're willing to die for.
And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for watching.